Hi everyone and welcome to SB Talks. I'm Anita Vallelonga, Private Wealth Advisor at Stanford Brown, and today we're diving into the world of ethical investing, what it is, what it isn't, and why more Australians are aligning their money with their values. Joining me is Elise McKay, Portfolio Manager of the Horizon Fund at Pendal, an ethical Australian fund that forms part of Stanford Brown's responsible portfolio. Elise and her team specialise in building portfolios that aim to deliver long-term growth while avoiding companies that cause social and environmental harm. She's here to unpack the facts, the frameworks, and the future of this fast-evolving space. Elise, welcome. So great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
If you don't mind just starting about your background and experience.
Absolutely. So I've been with Pendal now for 8 years. So I started as an analyst with the team and then became co-portfolio manager of Horizon Fund at the start of last year with Crispin Murray, who's head of the equities team. Prior to that, I was over in the US. I worked for an ESG high conviction activist fund in DC. And prior to that, for my sins, I was an investment banker at JP Morgan. But originally, I qualified as an accountant. So I've done lots of different things and I've lived in and worked in lots of different places, but I'm very happily living now in Cronulla and working for Pendal.
Fantastic, thank you. So let's get into it. There's so many terms out there. There's ethical, sustainable, ESG, and impact investing. Could you please break these down and how they differ?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because it is such a broad category. And really, it's like investing itself, because when we talk about investing, there's so many different ways you can invest and different styles or philosophies, from value through to growth. We're core managers, so we're very much style agnostic. And I think about that in terms of ESG or the sustainable investing category. So if I think about it, and so I start with a philosophical thought about, well, what is sustainability? And so for me, if I think that through, I think sustainable comes from the Latin word for, I think it's sustenere. And that means to hold up or to endure. So when I'm thinking about what does responsible investing mean, for me, it means how do we maintain the economy or our country, our environment at the current rate or level over time without depleting our natural resources, whilst also maintaining a minimum level of social standard of living for our population. So that's really that perspective of endurance is really important. So when I think about what makes a company sustainable, it's about, well, how will this company be able to endure in 50 years' time versus where it is today? And so when you think about the range of different types of for sustainable investing or responsible investing, the range of different categories. So I guess at one end you have like an ESG aware type fund. So, that's very light touch. It's very much just aware of the risks associated with environmental, social, governance categories, through to impact. And so on the other end of the spectrum is impact, where you really arguably don't care about performance so much as you care about the impact that you're generating. So Horizon Fund sits somewhere in the middle. So we believe we have to deliver performance. So performance comes first, but we need to do that in a way which is ethically aligned with our clients and what they're expecting in a portfolio, and looks to engage with companies to make sure that in 50 years' time they're still around.
So how do you and your team decide what company is considered ethical or responsible? Is it purely based on exclusions like tobacco or weapons, or are there other layers involved?
So there's definitely other layers involved. So firstly, when we think about when we're thinking about driving the transition or creating a fund, a portfolio which is aligned with the future Australia. So firstly, we think about, well, okay, the companies that we hold in this portfolio today, are they ethically aligned with what our clients want? And so when we think about, well, what do these clients want? So it's very much the ethical exclusions around fossil fuels, tobacco, alcohol, gaming, weapons. And then the second aspect is, well, then how do we think about those companies that are driving more, like a more sustainable outcome over the longer term? And so we think about that in two ways. So we think about, well, what companies are really leading that transition? And then what are those companies that are enabling the transition? And so from this basis, we think about on the top line, so revenue, what are the products or services that leading companies are producing or delivering to drive that transition? And so on that basis, we think about it as a test around revenue. So at least 50% of the revenues that the company producing aligned with more social, so a better standard of living or better health outcomes, for example, for the population. And then the second aspect is, well, we also need the companies that exist today to exist in 50 years. So we need them to enable better outcomes. And so how do we identify those companies that have the best leading business practices, so are doing a great job or a better job at managing their companies in a way that are aligned with the future? And so that's where we look at all of the companies in the investable universe. So I think for Horizon, it's 250 companies. We look at their sustainability strategies and we force rank them and take the top quartile of those companies' practices to determine who are the enablers of the future.
One misconception we hear a lot is that ethical investing means sacrificing returns. How can investors stay true to their values while still achieving strong performance? Are there ways to structure a portfolio to achieve both?
Absolutely. And I think that is, so if I think about the evolution of responsible investing, and I know we'll talk about this more later, but I really think that the evolution has been to be very much performance first. If you perform, you get the seat at the table. Then you can engage with companies for better outcomes, which are aligned with what our clients want. So performance has to come first. And for performance, you have to have a portfolio which is really well constructed. And so therefore, we structure the Horizon portfolio. Whilst we've got exclusions, which account for about 25% of the market, the remaining 75% of the market is investable. And so we structure a high conviction portfolio. It is core aligned with very tight risk controls, low factor bias, and a strong track record of alpha generation. So in other words, so this is a portfolio that not only does good, but it performs.
Fantastic. There's concerns around greenwashing. How can investors tell the difference between a fund that's genuinely ethical and one that's just more of a marketing exercise?
Yeah, absolutely. And for my view, to be honest, has historically been that a lot of what we think about in RI has been a bit of marketing fluff. And so that's been, I think, recognised by regulators around the world. And so, for example, RIA, which certifies products in Australia, they recently went through an exercise where they changed their certification processes. And so they've got 3 levels of certifications now. So the lower end is responsible, then sustainable, and then sustainable plus. So we've now gone through with Horizon a very in-depth review of the portfolio. And our documentation, are we doing what we say we do? And RIA has given us the highest rating, Sustainable Plus. So I think that if your clients are interested or concerned and want to learn more about greenwashing or to ensure that funds are not just greenwashing, then the RIA website is a really great place to start because it goes through that detailed and comprehensive review process online.
And how do you spell that? R-I?
R-I-A-A.
Excellent, thank you. People often assume ethical investing is just about climate or the environment. How does social and governance issue come into play?
Yeah, and it's really funny because I had a recent interaction with someone where a broker said to me, so there's this company and the CEO/founder has been in the paper a lot for a personal issue. And a broker called me up and he said, well, if you care about governance, then you won't buy this company. But if you don't care about governance, then you can buy it. And I was kind of like, whoa, that just is crazy, because governance is such an important part of value creation. And so if I think about the three pillars, so environmental, social, and governance. So environmental, if I think about so we don't have control about the transition of the grid, but it's happening maybe at a pace which is different to what different people around the country would like, but there is a transition in the grid occurring. And so companies need to be competitive, and they need to undertake this transition in a cost competitive way. So that's, if I think about environmental, that's one way to kind of context the environmental piece. The social piece, a way to kind of think about that pillar, is that Australia has a productivity problem. So we need to solve for productivity, and this is a key issue for the government, to unlock latent capacity in our economy. We can't grow as an economy unless we deliver productivity growth. And so if you think about the context of social in how do we solve for that productivity growth, and you might think about that in terms of, well, how do we bring more females into the workforce? There's significant untapped resource in our female workforce. And then finally, if we think about governance, so governance is, for me, when I think about governance, I'm thinking about, is a company allocating capital effectively? If we don't have adequate governance controls in a company, how do we know as minority shareholders that the capital is being allocated in a way that is in our best interests? And so individually, if any of these three things are not done well, that has the potential to destroy value over the long term. Individually, if these three things are done well, that has the potential to create a long-term sustainable capital advantage, which delivers long-term outperformance for our economy. And those are the companies that we want in the portfolio.
Thank you. Some investors are still hesitant, often seeing ethical investing as a bit of a trend or a political statement. How do you respond to people who are skeptical or even resistant to this approach?
Well, it's interesting. So I guess I've thought a lot about this, and actually I've talked a lot about it with my colleague JD, who's separately sitting here in the room. But if you think about the last election result, and so what happened at the last election? So we went, the Greens arguably lost dominance, so they went from 4 seats to 1 seat. But what we really saw was the rise of the Teals. So this has been we've seen now that the Teals went to 6 seats at the last election in 2022. 2025 election, they've gone to 8 seats. So when we think about the rise of the Teals, I think there's an analogy to that and responsible investing. So it mirrors the evolution of responsible investing from one which is quite dogmatic. So it's ideological, uncompromised focus on environmental outcomes or perfection, which appeals to purists, but it's at the expense of results, like actual achievable pragmatic results. We're not looking for perfection, we're looking for progress. And then if you think about the Teals, what do they represent? The Teals represent political pragmatism. So they want better outcomes, but they also want economic growth, and they're pragmatic and they want to deliver progress. They're community focused, not ideologically rigid. So I think that when we think about traditional ESG, it's very rigid or simplistic. So you just screen out companies, you look to buy companies that are delivering impact, and you don't care about performance. That no longer works. So we do not like that. We want an approach which is risk-adjusted performance through a cycle, built in a way that then once you've earned that, once you deliver that performance, you earn the seat at the table. Then you can go pound the table and agitate for for change. And then the other thing I would just say, like if you think about who wants to buy Horizon. So if I think about our clients who are invested in Horizon, I think that those clients are looking for alignment with the way that they vote, the things that they buy, and the way that they live. So if you play that back, so that's very results based. So they don't want to buy an EV which has no range. They don't want to pay 4 times for an airfare which is based on sustainable aviation fuel. And they're identifying more with the teals. So people are voting teals. And so for me, that's where Horizon sits. So that is then arguably our investors wield the most influence with the way they invest their money, even more so than the way that they vote. So if they want to do that, then there's a really great product and in RI that Horizon Fund, for example, that can deliver that need.
Do you think ethical investing is only for a certain type of investor, or can it be a pragmatic choice for anyone who wants to future-proof their portfolio?
I think it only works when it is a pragmatic choice. People want great outcomes, but they want performance. So I think you have to deliver both. And therefore, I don't think it is a niche. I think it's a framework to which you assess quality and manage risk. And so that's how I think about the new version of responsible investing.
If someone's on the fence, what's a small step that they could take to explore this space without needing to completely change their current investment strategy?
So I would actually be really interested in your view on this.
Oh, God. This is off script.
Throwing one back to you, because when I think about, and this is not my expertise, but if I think about your clients and how they want to build a portfolio, I'm guessing you want the core of the portfolio to sit in something which is, delivering outcomes, and perhaps there's a satellite piece where you can have more alignment with what you want your view of the transition to look like. So I'd be curious how you think about that.
Yeah, so with it starts at the investment preferences point with our clients. So I go through if they have any industries or sectors that they're not comfortable having investments held in. And then when I get that, I can then go to the market and see what products are available. For a lot of clients, they do like to have a passive approach for the core. So that means very cost effective, cheap and cheerful, just passively buying the market, but also having exclusions for the certain industries that they don't want to hold. So you're exactly right. That's the core of those portfolios. But that we want to have more bespoke investment in high conviction funds that can potentially deliver an alpha to our clients' portfolios as well. So we have that with your fund in the Australian sector, as well as in the global equity space. We also have active managers that also provide that alpha to our clients.
And so that for me is key, because what we offer that passive doesn't is that voice at the table. So if your clients are looking for someone who sits opposite a board, opposite a management team, and is advocating for what they want, this is where you get it. And so that for me is why I think it's important to have something like Horizon, particularly if you care about these issues in your portfolio.
Perfect. If I'm an investor looking to align my money with my values, what should I be looking for when choosing an ethical investment?
Yeah, so I think absolutely firstly starting with, are there products are there companies in the portfolio that don't align? And I'd take a curious approach. So I know I think we're going to talk about later a stock that's in the portfolio which is a little bit controversial. So Qantas, I'll flag that right now. But I think looking at firstly, what are the stocks in the portfolio? And so, for example, I find it interesting. So some funds will exclude fossil fuels if greater than 10% of their revenues are from fossil fuels. But on that basis, BHP is not excluded, despite BHP owning Australia's largest or second largest a coal business. So I think firstly, check the portfolio aligns with your values and what you're ethically aligned with. And then secondly, how's that portfolio manager or that fund adding value? How are they giving you the voice at the table? How are they reporting on it? And what else is being provided? What helps you understand that you are actually getting the returns plus more?
How transparent should an ethical fund be? What kind of reporting or engagement should a client expect?
Yeah, and so firstly, how do we engage? So we engage in many different ways. So I think about it from both a top-down and a bottom-up approach. So if I think about bottom-up, it is individual meetings with companies. So we have the privilege as one of Australia's largest active managers to sit opposite CEOs and chairs of Australia's largest companies. So firstly, you have that opportunity to engage on specific issues. And for each company, that's going to be different. We then do proxy voting. So we also vote. And so that's specifically, we get a say on REM is one thing so we can express our view through REM, and you increasingly see that being done in Australia. And then from a top-down approach, it's more about, so then what about the thematic engagement pieces? And so for us, for Horizon Fund, we have been engaging on is the gender pay gap. And so there's a very strong business case to engage on the gender pay gap because of if it is, and this is not about allocating wealth from one population, so from one gender to the other. It's about how do you actually grow the size of our economy, bring more women into the workforce, and therefore it benefits everyone. And so that's an area where we then take a specific issue like that, or it might be climate, it could be a number of different issues that we've engaged on over the years, and flow that down throughout across the sectors or the different companies in the portfolio. So then we might do and one-on-one engagements which touch on that issue, or organise broader roundtables that address this issue, for example. And then finally, governance. I mean, this is an ongoing area that we engage with individual companies, and it just needs to be top of mind constantly.
As you touched on earlier, could you please share an example of a company or a sector that you might find controversial but you believe is ethical?
Yeah, so Qantas, super interesting because it is a very large emitter of carbon. And so it is, so if you think about Qantas, so it isn't excluded because it's not producing the fossil fuels, but it uses them. And so if you think about Qantas, so we often get the question, well, how can Qantas be such a large position in the fund? And so I guess the way I think about it is, firstly, our clients want to travel. So our clients still want to enjoy their retirement, travel around the world. They're not going to stop flying because for majority of our clients are not going to stop flying because of the carbon footprint associated with it. But they'd love for the carbon footprint to be lower. And so how does Qantas do that? So Qantas does that by investing in lower emission planes. It does that by leading conversations globally around and has targets around the adoption of sustainable aviation fuel. And so if you think about sustainable aviation fuel, this is a nascent industry. It requires huge complexity. So you need governments to support the development of this industry. You need the supply chain built out so that the price can come down to a level where consumers are actually prepared to pay for airfares for planes which run on sustainable aviation fuel. So you need a company like Qantas, and Qantas really is one of the leaders globally to push that agenda and drive that transition, because if they don't, who will?
That's really fascinating. How do you see the ethical investing landscape evolving over the next 5 to 10 years?
So, I mean, for me, I think it's interesting because some funds outsource ESG. So they have analysts and then they have ESG analysts. And for me, it's a little bit crazy because I think investing well is investing responsibly. So I don't know how you separate the two. And so I think that we have seen that evolve. So I've certainly seen that evolve over my 10 plus years of investing. And I think that will continue to evolve. And so ESG will continue, or responsible investing will continue to move from being a nice to have to being a serious part of how capital is deployed. And I think that we're seeing regulation catching up, and I think that will continue.
What's one thing you wish more investors understood about responsible investing?
Well, and again, it goes back to one of the points we talked about at the start. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for progress. And that, for me, is what I wish people understood, because you don't sacrifice performance for progress. Mm-hmm. You can have both. And that, for me, it's that progress, influence, and future competitiveness is key to investing responsibly.
And finally, for someone just starting out, what's a good first step for them to explore the ethical investing space?
I think it's about for me, I really think it's about, well, what is the impact that you want to have on this world in terms of, and how are you already expressing that? And so I really think this is being expressed for different people in our population or our communities in the way that they vote, the way that they shop, the way that they live. And so then if you're thinking about those three areas, then why not think about it in the way that you invest? And there's plenty of, I think that then talking to your advisor to then understand, well, what does that look like? And then if you get curious, there is a wealth of information out there. I mean, we've got Horizon Fund has its own website, so you can jump on there. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I provide a lot of information on my LinkedIn, both around the Horizon Fund, but also around performance and what our expectation is for how markets are playing out. So there's a wealth of different opportunity out there, but I think it really comes back to how are you looking to align your investing in the way that you live, and talk to your advisor.
Elise, thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing such practical and thoughtful insights. It's clear that ethical investing isn't just about doing good, it's about being intentional and future focused with your capital. For those listening, if today's conversation has sparked some interest in aligning your investments with your values, feel free to reach out. We'd love to explore what this could look like for you. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, take care and invest with purpose.